Hey, everybody, this is Tom Salemi. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. It's great to have you here. We're going to have an excellent interview I did with Adam Elsesser. He is the CEO of Penumbra. Adam has an interesting path into medtech, and Penumbra is a fascinating company, one that sort of keeps reinventing itself. And Adam has some intriguing visions. Adam, the management team at Penumbra, has some intriguing visions for the future of the company. So I know you'll enjoy that conversation. Chris Newmarker and I will run through the Newmakers Newsmakers. Those are coming up. We'll also take a quick look back into Q1. Before we begin, I want to remind you that Device Talks Boston happens on May 10th and 11th. You can register at devicetalks.com. We'll talk about the program a little bit throughout. We'll also talk a little bit about Device Talks Minnesota, which is happening on June 6th and 7th. You can register for both at devicetalks.com, and you can use the same code for both, DTW25, and you'll save 25% off the price of registration. And finally, before we get into this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast, I want to let you know that our sponsor of this episode, TE Connectivity, is hosting a Device Talks Tuesdays on April 26th. It starts at 4 p.m. Eastern. The title is Advanced Catheter Designs, Optimizing for Precision and Profile. It features Bernard McDermott, an engineering fellow at TE Connectivity. Bernard was part of our TE Connectivity Device Talks Tuesdays last August. It remains one of our most popular, if not our most popular episode. So it is sure to be a great show. You can do two things to register. You can go to devicetalks.com. You can also scan the QR code on the graphic of this podcast, and that'll take you right to the registration site. Again, it's 4 o'clock on Tuesday, April 26th. It's free. You can watch it live, or you can watch it on demand, but make sure you watch it. Go to devicetalks.com for more information. And a little later in the podcast, we'll hear from Brendan Marinan. He is product manager of metals at TE Connectivity. We'll learn more about TE Connectivity and how it works with medtech companies. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Tom. How you doing, man?
We're doing this on Friday again.
Doing this on Friday. Got the coffee.
The coffee. We got so many emails and comments from last week saying they really enjoyed the Friday call. No one emailed, Chris. No one cares whether we do it on Thursday or Friday, but we do.
If we have an entertaining podcast and no one notices, was it entertaining?
They say they like us. Let's see. Everybody, show us how much you love us, everybody, by sharing this podcast on LinkedIn. No, anyway, all right. We'll save that for the end.
I'm just gonna stick with the belief that we're entertaining, that people love us.
Inside, I do believe good enough. We're smart enough.
Smart enough.
Doggone it.
Great minds think alike, Tom.
People like our podcast.
Gosh darn it.
So I think last week I suggested we'd have a special guest this week because we had to reschedule last week because of my tum-tum. Unfortunately, the guest couldn't make it this week, so we will have her on a future episode very soon, I hope. Not next week, but soon after. I'm optimistic. Yeah. But that's why it's just me and you. But I hope we'll do okay. Man. I hope we'll do okay.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. So it's
going to be great, Tom.
So we're going to, it's the first real podcast of the quarter. Well, last Friday it really was, but we're going to take a few minutes to kind of look back at the top stories of Q1. But before we do, just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have Device Talks Boston coming up May 10th and 11th. I'll bring it up now just because it's coming up. Coming up fast. A month. So, folks, please do register. Please do use the code DTW25. I will be there. Chris will be there.
I will be there. Our associate editor Sean Hooley will be there. Our senior editor Danielle Kirsch. I'm going to be seeing a lot of people in person. Actually, I haven't seen since the pandemic started. It's wild.
That's right. It would be great to, for the first time, to get folks who are listening to this podcast in the same building. And if you are attending, please, and you see Chris and or myself, stop us and say hi. And tell us you listen to the podcast. We'd love to.
Absolutely.
Love to meet you.
Yeah, we'll be doing a Newmakers Newsmakers in front of the crowd, right?
I think we could do that. Yeah, I got to build that into the schedule. Are you up for that?
I'm up for it. I mean, hopefully the people are up for it. Like, wow, I didn't know it was that crazy.
Whoa, jeez, yeah.
Whoa, I don't know.
I'm never listening to that podcast again. That was awful.
Will those guys just shut up?
We'll definitely do a little something on the on stage there. And again, if you do see us there, please do say hello. All right. Well, now speaking of the world's famous Newmarkers Newsmakers, let us roll into number 5. What's number 5 story of the week this week, Chris?
We have Ascensia launching Senseonics next generation 180-day ever since E3 CGM in the United States. This is it's an interesting business partnership. Like Senseonics, has created the technology. They're the maker of the CGM, and Ascensia is takes doing all the marketing and selling of this device. Just got FDA approval in February, and now it's launched here in the U.S. So in the first patient. So really exciting news. And it's interesting too, because we were talking about how this is kind of like the end of the first quarter, and interestingly enough, the most read story on mass device from the first quarter actually is a story that our associate editor Sean Hooley did in January with Senseonics' chief medical officer, Dr. Fran Kaufman. That interview also ran on this podcast, right?
It did. Yeah, it did. He actually interviewed her for the podcast and then turned it into an article.
It's gotten thousands of hits, and just a really nice dive into this technology, this 180-day sensor that is implanted inside you, and it was neat too. He closed off the article with a quote from her, talking about how they're looking to get this, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get an implantable where that would just last a year inside of you. So if you need to check your blood glucose, you can just kind of forget that there's this device inside of you that's measuring it, and you just can check your blood glucose whenever you need to. And pretty exciting
to think for those folks who have been managing their diabetes, that this is an exciting time, and it's become easier and easier to see that day may come when you have an implant that you could have inside a device implanted inside of you that would protect you for a year and help you manage your disease for a year. I can't imagine that folks would not be looking forward to that day.
I've got some relatives, with friends and relatives with diabetes, and probably you do too. It's everywhere. And it takes a lot of time. I mean, it's a really time consuming disease, and just the idea that you could have a implantable CGM, or Dexcom, their G7, which is out. That was another really big story early this year. This is almost like the year of diabetes devices, Insulet with their new insulin pump. But I mean, the G7, much smaller profile. You could hopefully not. The less intrusive it can be in your life, the better, really, with this technology.
And it bears repeating, we'll have Shacey Petrovic, the CEO of Insulet Corp, at Device Talks Boston. She'll be opening up day 2. So she'll be our opening keynote.
It'll be outstanding
on May 11th. So I hope folks will
really looking forward to that.
We'll see us there. So, all right, well, good stuff. And that podcast, which was very popular as well, one of our more popular, it went out on February 11th. But folks, you can find that on your podcast apps or on devicetalks.com if you want to hear directly from Dr. Fran Kaufman. She's the CMO of Senseonics. And Sean Hooley interviewed her, Kevin Sayer, CEO of Dexcom, and Jeffrey Brewer, the CEO of Bigfoot Biomedical.
Sean's just talking. The question now is which major players of the diabetes space are not talking to Sean. It's pretty awesome.
Let us roll on to number 4.
Number 4 on the list, we've got GE Healthcare, and let me see if I pronounce this right. Imika?
I'll go with Imika. IMEKA.
Imika. They're going to collaborate on brain MRI technology. So the collaboration involves GE Healthcare taking its brainwave advanced diffusion processing package, and they're going to integrate this with Amika's non-invasive neuroimaging technology. So hopefully this is a nice little, nice partnership that'll help just, up the game with, MRI and analysis of the brain.
Fantastic.
It's just really exciting to see. I mean, like GE Healthcare. I mean, this is going to be like a standalone company soon. One of the largest medtech companies out there, and they're like, we're working on some more innovation. So that's great.
It would be nice to have them an active part of the landscape for sure, and to have them out and growing and acquiring and really contributing to continuing to contribute to medtech.
Absolutely.
So, Good news.
Good news.
Good news indeed.
Hey, and talking about partnerships, number 3 on the list, we've got Olympus entering exclusive U.S. distribution agreement with EndoClot Plus. So, I mean, EndoClot Plus, they develop technologies in the hemostasis space, and that includes their EndoClot PHS, and it's like a non-thermal, non-traumatic method for achieving hemostasis with GI bleeds. It's designed to help stop these types of bleeds rapidly and reliably. And so this is this looks like a exciting distribution partnership here, where Olympus is going to get this technology out more to people. Well,
Olympus has become a large player in the Boston medical device space, and they've got a huge new plant out in outside of 495, so eastern central nice. Massachusetts, not too far out. And we will have them at Device Talks Boston. They'll be part of our single-use endoscopes panel, along with Ambu and Boston Scientific.
They're an important player. I mean, they've got a good presence here in Minneapolis too.
And now let's hear a quick message from our sponsor, TE Connectivity. I am here with Brendan Marinan. He is product manager of metals at TE Connectivity. Brendan, tell us about TE Connectivity.
Thanks, Tom. TE Connectivity is a global leader in sensor and connectivity solutions across several industries, such as automotive, industrial equipment, aerospace, and medical. We are one of those companies as a consumer you may not know, but we are the manufacturer of components and products you use every day. In particular, our medical business is built upon a legacy of leading and acquired brands. Craiganna Medical, a leading partner for minimally invasive catheter-based technologies. Microgroup, precision engineering partner for advanced surgical metal tubing and components. Precision Wire, a specialist wire solutions manufacturer, and a number of other entities that many of your listeners will have come across. We have over 4,500 employees within our medical business worldwide, with over 450 of those very talented and experienced engineers. At our heart, we are an engineering company empowering engineers to solve the toughest challenges of our medical device customers.
That's great. We'll hear more from Brendan a little later in the podcast. If you need more information about TE Connectivity, go to te.com. Roll on to number 2.
Number 2 on the list, more spin-off news. I mean, gosh, when I really started covering this industry a lot, a little over a decade ago, it was all about mergers, and we've had so much M&A, and now it looks like we're kind of in this trend right now of companies like doing spin-offs. Like, some of these big companies are breaking up, and one of the things we covered this week that was really big was that you had DGO's parent company, Colfax, changed their name to Innovus, and they took the fabrication technology business that they also had and spun that off as a company called, ESOB. It's an acronym. And now following that split, then Innovus is now a standalone orthopedic, device company, one of the, arguably one of the 10 largest in the world. It's going to be run out of Maryland. So yeah, just another example of a company splitting up, and now we've got this standalone orthopedic device company that includes the DGO that's out there. So just kind of a changing landscape right now.
It's a fascinating time for orthopedics, but spinoffs, you're right. And you actually had an interesting article this week. Sean Hooley wrote that one up. The analysts at Needham were sort of speculating about the spinout opportunities at Medtronic, identifying spine and diabetes as 2 principal possibilities for spinouts. Obviously, they're more speculating on whether it makes sense. And I think their take was it would be sort of a wash, that it wouldn't be necessarily a windfall. But it's going to be interesting to see if Medtronic decides to shed some of those areas that perhaps it doesn't consider critical, but it's made some investments in this space. Certainly we had on the Medtronic Talks podcast recently a discussion about their use of AI tools and about customized spinal rods. So, they're investing in this space. It's not like they're paring back at all. And they've just appointed a new head of diabetes. So, and they have that that arrangement with Blackstone. So there's certainly a lot going on there.
I mean, diabetes, the top management of Medtronic. I mean, it's had some real challenges over there, including FDA challenges. But the top management of Medtronic has kind of said in the past that they want to stick with it. This area where they really want to compete. So we'll see. But it does. Maybe it comes down to just because a bunch of other people are doing something doesn't mean you should do it. So I mean, we'll see. Yeah, we got a bunch of big companies that are splitting off or spinning off businesses, that they're arguing could be better off if they were on their own. But we'll see what Medtronic does.
Absolutely. And that was, again, written this week, written by Sean Hooley. And definitely you can find that on massdevice.com.
Definitely some good questions.
Absolutely. And in the article that Sean wrote up from the Needham report, quotes Jeff Martha saying, our new operating model is giving us a line of sight into what is required to compete and win over the long term in each of our businesses. Then he went on to say, as a result, we're looking at our portfolio with a more critical eye, with a focus on growth and creating shareholder value. I'd be surprised if there weren't changes over the coming fiscal year, but I don't know yet if they will be smaller or more significant. So sounds like something's coming. Something's coming. So we'll be following that story too.
I mean, a change is going to come.
Change is coming. Right. What is the number one Newmarkers Newsmakers of the week?
The number one Newmarkers Newsmakers of the week is FDA approving Abbott's leadless pacemaker for patients with slow heart rhythms. This is their Avere single chamber leadless pacemaker. This has been one of the more exciting spaces, and actually Medtronic has been a kind of a leader in the space with their Micra leadless pacemakers. But now we got Abbott. They're up in the game, looking to compete. More in this space, and they've got some arguments here for why the advantages that that they have with the Avere technology, and I would say I very much like to see them come on this podcast.
Absolutely,
really cool to hear them talk about it.
We have reached out. We'll definitely be working with them in some regard to get this story told. But Abbott has been bringing it. I mean, with structural heart, and now with this, they're definitely moving into some huge areas. Going right at Medtronic and a couple of them. So we will have Abbott well represented at Device Talks Boston and Device Talks Minnesota. And certainly we'll have them on the podcast as well. I know Sean is going to be talking with Nick West, who's been on a few times. He'll be talking with him again in a couple of weeks.
I'm just always, I think it's really good when you see more competition. You can't go wrong having more competition, and it encourages everybody to kind of up their game and hopefully innovate, and get some like more cool technologies out there to help people. So let's bring it on.
Absolutely. And I think competition is something that's being fed by the other big news of the quarter, big Newsmakers Newsmaker of the quarter. What was the other the number two most?
Talking about upping competition. I mean, another one are along with this diabetes tech news, another story that really got a lot of page views on Mass Device so far this year was Medtronic's plans to acquire a cardiac arrhythmia treatment developer called Affera. Hopefully I pronounced that right.
You did? Yeah.
I did. Affera, good. All right. Based in Newton, Massachusetts, like your neck of the woods. But they design and make a cardiac mapping and navigation systems, as well as a catheter-based cardiac ablation, platform, for treating AFib. So that's a really big space. And even Martha this is like a nearly $1 billion deal. And Martha was saying during a Q3 call in February that this helps plug some competitive gaps in Medtronic's portfolio. So just a really good acquisition for them, as we were saying, like more competition in the space, and they're laying down nearly $1 billion to kind of strengthen their cardiac ablation platform, as competition increases. So yeah, really cool.
This will help them in pulse field ablation. And we will actually be having a panel on pulse field ablation at Device Talks Boston. We already have actually folks from Boston Scientific and Acutus on there. Both have been on the podcast before. Ken Stein from Boston Scientific and Steve Mickelson from Acutus. And I'm this close, I think, to having someone from Medtronic on there as well. So it'll be a great conversation. That'll be one of the first panels on May 10th. So
outstanding.
Lots of cool stuff. And I'm glad
people have to go to this show. I mean, you got to be there.
I want to be there. I should go. I will go. Yeah. I'll be there. We'll be there.
You want to go to your own show?
I think I have to. Yeah.
I think you have to. But luckily, if you look at the agenda, there's some really good stuff going on here.
If I didn't work here, I would still want to go. So,
exactly. Gosh. That's what I say too. This looks good.
All right. Well, awesome. Great list, Chris Newmarker, and good to look back onto Q1. We'll do this again from time to time and take a look back. It's good to be reminded of all the cool stuff that's happening in medtech.
It's really exciting. I just love this space, and it's almost like a week doesn't go by where there just isn't something just really fascinating or awesome going on. Really.
Well, Adam Elsesser, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
We were just recounting before I pushed record. It's been about 4 years since we last talked. Lots happened to Penumbra and to Device Talks and to the world. It's going to be great to catch up. I'd love to understand, or if you could remind me about your path into medtech. It was interesting because you were an attorney to start, correct?
Yeah.
How'd you move into medtech, running a medtech?
It's not a typical story, and it was not planned. As you said, I was a commercial real estate lawyer with a practice out here in the Bay Area in California. And I had represented a bunch of tech companies, Yahoo, Google, Oracle, all the Adobe, in their real estate needs. And I was a partner in my law firm. I had a great plan ahead of me. That this was sort of my life. My best friend from college became a physician and focused on being a neurointerventionalist, the kind of doctor who does obviously catheter work in the brain. And back in 1998, we happened to have a social dinner in New York, just to catch up. He mentioned ideas he had for devices. In order to get him to stop talking about it, I said something to the effect of, we'll just start a company. I wasn't obviously serious. And the next day he called and asked if we could get together, or I shouldn't say asked. He insisted that we get together to start the company that I promised him, his best friend, that we would start together. And here we are. So there was nothing planned about it. It was pure happenstance. And, sometimes the best things in life are like that. And that's literally the story.
That's great. Anyone who listens to the podcast regularly knows that I like to focus on those moments. I mean, very often someone I'm talking to is working at a big company and is moving to a small company or vice versa. Never really is the shift in career as drastic as this one. Walk me through the thought process. Like, you were succeeding in the path you've chosen. What on earth would convince you to go in a entirely different direction?
Well, if you ever meet Dr. Ronnie Bose, who's my co-founder and dear friend, and he is quite compelling. It's hard to say no to him. And he's one of the most kind and charming folks people have ever met. So you got to start with, I was at a huge disadvantage for saying no to him. That being said, I don't know how to answer that question, because in many parts in life, you go through a very clear process. You think about the pros and the cons, and you sort of are deliberative. I never really thought about this, and I look back on it. It was probably at the time the most irresponsible thing I've ever done. I had 2 kids, a mortgage in San Francisco, and I took a massive pay cut for many, many years to do something, that I didn't know anything about. And like, that's not like, I wasn't being a responsible, dad. It turned out okay, thank God. But I was just compelled, I just sort of did it. And I guess I always thought I could always go back. I had a good practice. I could build it again. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel like I was, going to be destitute, but that, it just felt like, why wouldn't you try to do something that could help all these people? Like, we have a shot, but we have a shot at helping a lot of people. Why shouldn't I try it? It was that simple. So I just said, why not? Let's give it a shot.
That's awesome. No, that's as good a reason as any. And that company was Smart Therapeutics, correct?
Yeah, that first company was called Smart Therapeutics. We made the first stent ever to go into the brain. Came upon that through processing nitinol thinner than other people had been able to do that to make the physical product. We sold that to Boston Scientific. We stayed for a little bit, and a couple of years later, we started Penumbra. And Penumbra had a very different mindset. The first one, we felt just lucky to get a product made and, through the FDA process. And, we didn't really know a lot more than that. But with Penumbra, we had spent a little more time. We had a little more understanding. And we thought, we could do this, in more areas than one. We could, take our time to go after areas that might not be as quick to develop. So acute stroke, which was our first area of focus for Penumbra, was going to be a really long challenge, because when we started with Penumbra, there were really three giant hurdles for us. One, none of our potential customers, neurosurgeons or neurointerventionalists, with a few exceptions, and they're wonderful pioneers, but many of them didn't really think about treating stroke. That wasn't in their mindset. They were like, it's not really going to happen. What are you talking about? There was no reimbursement for a product at all.
Wow.
And there was nothing that we were working on that was patentable. And so when you looked at those three barriers, we thought that was the perfect setup for success, of course. And so it was a little bit crazy, obviously, but here we are. And I told, one of the benefits of the way we did it is we never took venture capital money, formal venture capital money. And, not a statement about that at all, other than, we were lucky that from my law practice and life, we knew a lot of people with means. And we were, with our first company, able to raise money privately, just friends. Penumbra, we were able to do the same. And with Penumbra, I basically told the investors that were friends of mine, you can call me as a friend anytime because we're friends, but you cannot call me as an investor for at least 20 years. Because what we're doing might take 20 years. It's that hard, that long, and you just have to accept that. And there are certain things, in our space that take time. That they need to be done. When you step back and say, I have a blood clot that's causing an acute stroke that is going to leave me, either dead or impaired for the rest of my life, or I can try to get it out and have a much better shot at being closer to normal functioning. Why wouldn't you try to get it out? That's
sure.
obvious. But that wasn't the mindset at the time. So we knew that the products had to get better and better. It was really hard to make these products that did that. The first one wasn't going to be perfect. Here we are, on our 10th or 11th version. We're still improving them, and we still have improvements to come. And it was that journey that sometimes the more traditional venture capital model isn't really suited for. And so we didn't need that. We were lucky enough, and we could build a different mindset. And that's been true in our peripheral business, that we're changing mindsets there around, blood clots in your legs or your hearts or your lungs. And when we started, people didn't think that was likely possible, and here we are in the, again, early innings of really fundamentally changing that, and probably have another decade of growth to, get everyone to, as the products get better and better, to think about just removing blood clot, and making it more democratic, if you will. So time sometimes doesn't line up with sort of the more traditional model.
You identified three significant barriers there that could have steered you into another direction, but you decided to head down that track either. Which did you sort of address, and you headed down that track anyway? Which did you address first? I imagine you developed the device first and then try to use that to change the minds of physicians, and then the payers are going to come last regardless, I think.
Well, actually, it's the payers came. We were very lucky, that CMS, I think, was very proactive. And, if you look at the cost to, Medicare and just the healthcare system in general of having a stroke and post-stroke care, it's one of the most expensive drags on our system. I mean, it's billions and billions and billions. And so they were relatively proactive, and without an awful lot of data, they opened up a reimbursement pathway. So, but that was second. The devices came first. Again, they were good enough to start the game. You have to really care. And there was some incredible pioneers in this field who really took on the challenge, physicians, of working with the companies and getting the products to, perform and get better and better. And then reimbursement. And then the patent stuff, that's sort of a funny thing. We're going into a trial soon on a product called Thunderbolt for stroke, back to our first, and that has patents. That's the first real substantive patents that have mattered for us. And we've been around for 17, 18 years as a company. So we went public, we built our entire business really, initially in stroke with no patents focused on any of those products.
Really?
And it was a question that, lots of investors had when we went public. And we just said, the field's early, innovation is still ripe, and we're just going to keep out innovating. And it turned out we did. And that was enough to keep us ahead. Now, as we get a little more mature, again, 17, 18 years into it, we were fortunate to come up with an amazing innovation, again, called Thunderbolt, that does have issued patents. But here we are. It's taken a long time. And
why take that route? It seems like people these days will patent a doorknob. I mean, they'll patent anything they can. Were you just confident in your abilities to compete without that sort of barrier to entry?
A little bit, I'm confident. I developed some confidence. I won't tell you, we think about competitors all the time. I never take anything for granted. We, have a fair amount of thought around that so that we can make sure that we constantly stay ahead. But we also know the field pretty well. And we know that, unfortunately, for the field, a lot of people try to copy what other people have done. That's a part of the medical device field. And when you have a lot to do and you know that you're not perfect, you can likely stay ahead of that. Now, you got to always try to stay ahead of that. Sometimes you get caught short by a month or two or a quarter, and that's never fun, but it's also not important in the scheme of the innovation that we're talking about.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about innovation. All right, we're back with Brendan Marinan, Product Manager of Metals at TE Connectivity. Brendan, how does TE Connectivity work with medical device companies?
Our vision is to become the industry partner of choice for the design and manufacture of medical device solutions for our OEM customers. We estimate that 120 patients are treated every minute with a medical device containing our TE technology. So in that regard, we partner with both the world's largest medical device companies and the most innovative startups. We have sites in all the leading medical device hubs worldwide, serving our customers at their point of need. We can assist them with the design and development of the most critical metal components, right through to ramping in an efficient and quality-driven manner for volume. We can support that volume manufactured then through our locations globally, from our low-cost locations in Costa Rica, Mexico, and China, through our automated solutions across all our plant networks in Europe, US, and Asia.
And finally, we'll be talking a lot about neurovascular technologies. I understand TE Connectivity does a lot of work in the space. Tell us, what are your offerings in the neurovascular space?
Yes, absolutely. Neurovascular, no more than some of the other areas, we see continued growth and advancement and innovations in that area. And in parallel to that, we're continuing to invest in our advanced engineering solutions for neurovascular. We have ongoing investments in the next generation of laser cutting, welding, and cleaning systems for small diameter shafts. We're developing modular solutions to help customers get to market faster and more efficiently across our metal-based solutions and our wire solutions. We're also about to launch our new Propellus prototyping center offering, where we can offer quick turnaround support for customers in our metal shaft and wire product development efforts. This, in conjunction with the simulation efforts and engineers we have on board, will really help, I think, our customers and players in this market deliver improved solutions, the more advanced, most advanced solutions in what is a very exciting neurovascular market today.
Thank you, Brendan Marinan, for joining us on this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. And thank you, TE Connectivity, for sponsoring this podcast and for holding our Device Talks Tuesdays on April 26th at 4 p.m. Once again, if you want to register, the title is Advanced Catheter Designs, Optimizing for Precision and Profile. featuring Bernard McDermott. He is the engineering fellow at TE Connectivity. Brendan says he's one of the more experienced metal shaft professionals out there. So you definitely want to catch this presentation. Go to devicetalks.com to register. You can also scan the QR code on the podcast graphic you'll see on the Device Talks website, or you can just click a few links and you'll be taken there as well. So lots of ways to register. You can watch it live or on demand, but make sure you watch it. Go to devicetalks.com. Well, let's talk about innovation. I referenced the interview we did back in 2018. You appeared at a conference that I had helped organize. And in the conference on stage and also in an interview, you had stated that one of your approaches to remaining innovative and ahead of things is you prefer, or at least you seek out hiring younger engineers because they come at it with a newer and fresher perspective. Number one, am I remembering that correctly? And number two, is that still a philosophy you employ?
Yeah, we have been really fortunate. We've been able to attract and hire just an extraordinary group of engineers. And unlike some folks, companies who might seek out somebody with a lot of experience, and don't, get me wrong, we value people's experience. But if you think about the kind of work that we're known for, we're doing things that have never been done. If you're hiring someone, that has been doing that for a long time, again, no disrespect intended to any experienced engineer. We have them and need them. But the odds of somebody sort of waking up on a random Tuesday and saying, oh my God, after 5 years of working in this field, I figured it out today, may be different than somebody who hasn't been doing that work. And again, it might not just be chronological age, it might just be experience in that field. Fresh perspectives really help. The ability to sort of look at problems from a fresh eye and say, what is it that we're stuck on? Why aren't we yet at a point where, the product is close to perfect? And what do we need to do? That seems to be more effective with people who have that ability. Sometimes that's age, sometimes it's just a mindset. But traditional thinking doesn't help you do things that have never been done. Now, if your motto, and form as a company is to, sort of get another version of a category of product out there, then those people who've already done it become really important because they know how to do it.
Sure.
That's not how we think about our innovation. We traditionally don't like to just make products that are different versions of other products that are out there.
Well, that's understandable. And looking again at your workforce, another thing I remember you us talking about 4 years ago was you made a point of stating the diversity of your workforce. At the time, you said the majority of your employees were women, 80% of your employees were non-white. And this was in 2018. Obviously, diversity was something we talked about back then, but it became even a greater focus was put upon it in 2020 for a variety of reasons, including the killing of George Floyd. Has anything changed for Penumbra in terms of your approach to diversity? It seemed like you were doing great prior to that. How do you sort of look at the industry's renewed focus on that, and how are you approaching things going forward?
So I think it's a really great question. There's a lot of layers of that. So, we'll start with the most fundamental of who are we hiring? Are we hiring enough people of color, enough women? And we have done, as you cited, really, really well. We didn't go backwards from those numbers since we last talked in 2018. So from the most basic level, that's not because we do anything unique. We don't have some program. We literally are just trying to find the best people for the jobs. And, in the case of gender, the population are women, and therefore it's not surprising that half of those people that fill those jobs are women. That's also true in our engineering ranks. About half of our engineers are women. And that doesn't surprise us given the workforce that's out there. What we have, there might be groups within there that, we could do better and we're slightly underrepresented. But as a general rule, I know the company has done extraordinarily well. What we really tried to focus on, in addition to that, going forward in 2020 was something a little more subtle and a little harder to tease out. And that is, how do we act as a company, the people within our company around, and do we understand our sort of unconscious biases as we interact with people that are different from us? And we actually went out and sought stories from, particularly in 2020, from some of our Black employees about what they experienced, at Penumbra. And again, a company that prides themselves in bringing in a diverse workforce. And we put together a whole training around unconscious bias. And I understand, there's a lot of political anxiety and concerns around some of this stuff. It's nonsense. We all have biases. We all don't understand them sometimes. There's no one who's, affirmatively, with a few exceptions, maybe acting as bad actors. It's bringing awareness to how our behavior impacts other people and creating an environment that really matters and is as supportive and open to a broad range of people. If you do that, it's not a political statement, it's a human statement, and you're going to have a much better experience with people. And frankly, you're going to have a much better business because you bring in different perspectives, which mean you're going to be more successful. That training, I think, is pretty cutting edge. Some of the stories are pretty poignant about people's experiences. I was incredibly proud of the folks who shared their stories with us so we could do that. And we've been able to, I think, start that journey of, we, again, have done well, but really looking internally and saying, how do we keep doing this better and better and better so that we can get to the point where it is an environment that everyone can thrive in. So I think it's continued. I'm personally very proud of it, and it shows in the diversity of our workforce.
And the final area I wanted to hit upon was your real immersive system, sort of your VR system. I think initially we can talk about it better than I can, of course. Yeah. But initially, as I saw on the website, it was more of a stroke rehabilitation tool. Now I'm seeing additional applications for mental health and other uses. Talk about the system, but how does a VR system fit into a clot clearing device company?
So it's a great question. Let me address that question first, and then I can sort of describe the product maybe. We have always viewed ourselves as a healthcare company. We don't put those limits on us as, by the customers or the type of material we use or the clinical area that we go into. If we did that, we would have stayed a neuro company, focusing on one product. And obviously, since we talked, where neuro was the biggest part of our business, now our vascular side's much bigger than neuro. That change happened since we last talked in 2018. And so we wouldn't have been able to do that as if we saw ourselves that way. And in fact, when we went public in 2015, I shared with investors that in 5 or 6 years, if we do 3 things, we hire the best people, we constantly innovate, and we execute well, that I said in 2015 that our vascular business would be bigger than our neuro business in 5 or 6 years. And we have done that. And we had an investor day last September to talk about immersive healthcare. And I reminded everyone that I had said that. And here we are, our vascular business is now bigger than neuro because we did all those things. I then said that if we continue to hire the best people, innovate, create well, and execute, that immersive healthcare will be the biggest part of our business in the next 5 years.
Wow.
Or 6 years, I think. I said 5 to 6 years.
We'll cut you slack.
Got to give me a little wiggle room. We still have to do that work. It's a brand new area, but it's so clear to the folks who have paid attention to it and done work in it that the need is there. The idea of using the tool of virtual reality across a large spectrum of mental health conditions and physical conditions and so on are there. The science is behind it, the understanding around it. And a lot of it just comes down to friction of delivery of the tool and the product. And so we've pivoted to really think about this as building a platform technology where we're investing heavily on the hardware side, as well as the software side, and building sort of the channels, if you will, so that we can not only have our content, but we can have third parties' content on the system. Sort of think about it, like the Sony PlayStation model, if you will. In fact, we hired one of the most senior executives at Sony Interactive Entertainment, which is Sony PlayStation, who had been there from the beginning, to help us do that, who understand all the mistakes that have been made and the ways to make sure we don't do them, and really lead our third-party developer effort here. So that's the goal. So for us, the fit is perfect. There are people who need help, and we have a really good solution that might help them. And so that's exactly our core mission. It's that simple. So for us, it fits in exactly with everything else we've done. It just happens to be different customer base. It happens to be different conditions, but it is exactly the mission that we've set out to do. And a lot of the people in the field want us to do this. And that's frankly most satisfying part and most validating part is there are many, many companies, there are over 100, mostly smaller organizations that are working on great content. They're not more than a software company per se, and we can help them get that content out there on the platform. And so rather than look at this as one person wins, there's an opportunity to harness just the extraordinary effort of so many people and really accelerate that out there as fast as possible. So it seems like an obvious fit. Again, we have to continue to hire the best people, which so far we've done, innovate, which so far we've done, and execution, which that's always the hard part, but we're on our way.
Are you developing content and sort of the software part of it only, or are you also developing the system itself?
So we're working on all of it, the hardware as well as the software. There's two types of software. There's the software, obviously, that runs the platform, which is different than the experiences. Within the experiences, our own studios, 3 different studios now inside Penumbra, working on content, and again, reaching out to lots and lots of different people who are working on content and getting them to develop it well and be on our platform. So lots of work over the next 12 months to make that a reality. But as that develops, so far, I'm pretty optimistic. The reception has been amazing.
And does that put you up against an Oculus, a Facebook? I mean, you competing for that sort of the market? Are you going to have your own metaverse that you're going to sell real estate in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we compete against them. They're social media companies. They tend to be involved in entertainment. There's nothing entertainment about this. This is serious sort of real work, necessary to help people get better. The metaverse is, I've seen the videos and all like that. We don't want to live in the metaverse. We want to live in the real world. and our product's called the Real System for a reason. We want to be involved in, bringing people back to the most healthy state. So I think we're in different places in different worlds. I don't think we compete with those companies at all. It's just a different thing. I don't think social media companies want to be regulated by the FDA and everything else that goes with it. That doesn't strike me as an area that we're going to have to worry about.
No, they don't tend to encourage regulation. And I see enormous opportunity with learning disabilities and other things as well, for sure. So you gave the 6-year window as to this becoming a bigger part of your business. Is this sort of the next phase, the only next phase for Penumbra? And this is my final question. Or are there have you made some other bold predictions to analysts that you could share as to what the company might look like in half a decade?
Not publicly.
You want to do that here, or are you good right now?
Probably not a good idea.
Well, I'm just curious, how do you balance, I imagine they're very different businesses, the software content side and the medical device side. How do you keep everybody moving on the same train, moving in the same direction?
Hire really good people and, communicate a lot, and it works. But they are operated differently. There's a different process. And again, I think we know enough about how to navigate in the healthcare arena to trade off that experience, so that we know how to do that. We have an extraordinary team, and folks leading that effort are some of the best in the business. And there's a lot of excitement about it. So it's pretty easy when you see the successes and hear the patient stories. to keep motivated and to keep focused on it.
That's great. Well, I'll put in my calendar to check back with you another 4 to 5 years, and we can check your progress.
We'll see how good we went.
Well, Adam, thank you for the time and for joining us in the podcast.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Chris Newmarker. Well, it's good to talk to you on Friday, and it's going to be great to put this podcast out. And how can folks find you out there in the land of social media?
Out in the social universe, I don't know
multiverse. The social media multiverse. How can we find you?
Now pure data. They can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. You can find me on Twitter as well at Newmarker. Always happy to talk about new things.
Absolutely. And I am on Twitter at MedTechTom, on LinkedIn, Tom SALEMI. Chris Newmarker. We want people to watch.
You got to like, follow, subscribe.
There you go. Like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast channel. So Device Talks podcast channel features Device Talks Weekly, Stryker Talks, which will come out on Monday. Got a new second episode coming out on Monday. And Intuitive Talks, which will come out later this month. So subscribe to that one channel. You get all this MedTech content sent straight to you. And then while you're at it, follow Medtronic Talks, their own podcast channel, and you'll get the latest on Medtronic. So lots going on over there as well. We're upping our we're back to our twice a month schedule with Medtronic Talks. So we'll have this podcast 4 times a month, Stryker Talks once a month, Intuitive Talks once a month, Medtronic Talks twice a month. So that's a lot of podcasting. A lot of podcasts. Yeah. So
whole heap and serving of podcasts.
So please
do you feel like a podcast empire builder, Tom? Do you feel like you're?
I definitely want to be a mogul. I'd like to be a podcast mogul.
Yeah, mogul.
Yeah. I want to, sit in my office and smoke a pipe and, squish the little man. That'd be fun, I think, right?
No, you going to run for the Senate then or something?
I have Newsies in my head as I talk about that. I want to drive these little kids.
I was getting this evil senator thing, like bourbon in the corner,
Just think Newsies. That's me. I'm going to be in the wood paneled podcast studio.
The wood panel. I like that wood paneling. Wood paneling needs to come back. Would you do oak? Would it be oak paneling or go for a nice walnut? Or what do you think?
I don't know. We'll have to get some swatches and see what looks good. Yeah.
There you go.
I'll pay someone to get swatches because I'll be podcast rich and famous by that point.
You're a mogul, Tom.
I'm a mogul for crying out loud.
You're going to Home Depot and you send somebody else to Home Depot. Come on.
Absolutely. All right, we are way off track, but it's Friday and we're happy. All right, folks, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Please do share this episode of the podcast on your social media channels. Please tag Chris and or myself. Don't forget to go to devicetalks.com to listen to all these great podcasts if you don't subscribe. And while you're there, register for Device Talks Boston and Device Talks Minnesota. Use or you can go to both. We'd love to see you both, but just pick one and use the code DTW25 to save 25%. And check out our roster of Device Talks Tuesdays while you're on there. There's so much MedTech content. It's crazy. So go to devicetalks.com. All right, Chris, that's it.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy the spring.